What's going on, everyone? Meteorologist Mike Linden coming at you live from the My Radar studio here in Orlando, Florida. I hope you are doing well and you are staying safe this evening. Not many days left to go here in 2021, but here we are with severe weather lasting into the evening hours. Let's waste no time and let's jump right into the app right now and take a look at an active tornado warning right now that is over a portion of Alabama. You can see there's roughly 16 minutes left in this tornado warning, but right along this particular line, there have been potential tornadoes. We've seen some damage, reports of gusts that are quite strong, as well as some reports of trees coming down, damage to some outbuildings in this area. So it's certainly something that has remained active throughout this evening. Let me zoom out here, and you can see that this entire training line has continued to work its way through northern Alabama, just north of Birmingham there, south of Huntsville. Huntsville now on the backside of this. But if we take a look here at the weather outlooks, I'll pop on the Storm Prediction Center outlook. You can see that the enhanced risk, that being a 3 out of 5 from the Storm Prediction Center, has shrunk. That's that orange color that does encompass Huntsville, as well as portions of Tennessee and Georgia. Chattanooga in that enhanced risk, Rome, Georgia in that enhanced risk, and that is where we stand right now. But I want to bring in meteorologist Matthew Cappucci, who has been with us this evening. He's been tweeting for us across social media, and things are, Matthew, still going here. I mean, it is 9:30 on the East Coast, and we are still looking at severe weather here. Again, December 29th. I have to reiterate that to people. December 29th, it's the winter, and here we are dealing with a very spring-like setup.
Yeah, definitely. One thing we talk about in Mississippi, Alabama, is that they don't have a typical tornado season that's dense like you sometimes see on the Great Plains. So in Oklahoma, for example, it's usually April and May, but you have to live in a heightened state of awareness for much of the winter and the spring months, even early summer if you live in places like Birmingham, Alabama, from really late November all the way through June. We actually do have one tornado warning right there. If we can pull the app up right now, a little bit north of Birmingham. That one is in effect for, it looks like, DeKalb County and portions of, actually, right now it is a confirmed tornado near Rainsville, Alabama. That is the confirmed tornado warning right now. It's worth mentioning this is something called the Northern Bookend Vortex. So you saw It's a great product you can get in the My Radar app. Anything green is moving towards the radar, red is away, and when you have those two colors right next to each other, you get that kind of spin, and that's why I think that area is definitely under the gun. It is a confirmed tornado right now, a damaging tornado near Rainsville, moving east at 45 miles per hour. Interstate 59, a little bit west of Matone, a little bit southeast of Henniger, will be up next. So folks in that area, you got to seek shelter, lowest floor of whatever building they're in, and avoiding windows. And Mike, very quickly, I want to mention, That area is kind of at that enhanced corridor right now where there's just enough juice. It's along the northern gradient of the Cape, the instability out there. So it's kind of riding that boundary. So this could stay going for a little while. 65 knots worth of shear, change of wind speed and or direction with height. So it's that little narrow corridor we've been watching all evening long for that tornado risk. And even though the sun has gone down, the slight lessening of how much juice there is has been offset by the extreme amount of spin in the atmosphere. So folks near Henniger, near Eider, and eventually east towards Interstate 59 have to be in shelter right now for this active tornado ongoing.
Right. As you mentioned, Matthew, there is rotation within that cell there. And this is along that same line that has, once again, it's been training along that point. Again, we saw an earlier likely tornado damage, but now, as you mentioned, a confirmed tornado right there in that red box. And if I zoom in here, you can get a really good look at it here. It's, as Matthew said, that bending kind of line indicative of some very strong winds. The good news here, if there is some to find, is that we haven't seen anything super significant as what was expected earlier today. Again, that hatched risk was in place for this part of the world. But Chris, if we want to bring up the graphics here that I have prepared, we can take a look at some of those storm reports. Again, I'm just going to have to move the map up here close to the Fort Payne area. Again, you can see where we are looking right now at that C in the air. And in fact, let me grab the scope tool, as Matthew said, and we can take a look here at the velocity. So again, you can see it just right there. Let me grab that pointer tool so you can really get a good look at it right here. Can see where I'm pointing, guys? That is the area that we are watching here. And if I put it into motion, oh, we lost it. Let me go back here. If we put it into motion, you can start to see, again, where that potential rotation is. Let me put the scope back on it. You get a better idea of things. But Matthew, again, this is a setup that you would expect to see here in the spring, rather, not necessarily here in December. And I know you've got to get going here, so I want to round things out, Matthew, with what you expect here out of the next couple of days. Again, tomorrow, a marginal risk in place for the southeastern coastline of the United States, but now attention goes to New Year's Eve and into New Year's Day. Of course, some folks might choose to go out and celebrate the ending of 2021 into 2022, but looks likely to be some more nasty weather potentially right here in this neck of the woods.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I want to mention very briefly, I was actually just looking at correlation coefficient. For folks at home, that's a radar product that shows us kind of the shape of whatever's in the atmosphere. And we're actually able to see jagged shapes right now east of Rainsville, Alabama, where that tornado is still on the ground. So really cool to see that the radar can actually tell us what is up there. Raindrops look kind of like normal shapes. Anything jagged, the inference is debris. Now, Mike mentioned this continuing threat over the next several days, a really good point there. I think this leftover eddy, this leftover we call a mesoscale convective vortex, sort of the spin associated with the northern part of this line of storms and the tornado-producing storm right now, could actually induce more severe weather tomorrow. Oftentimes, these setups kind of leave like little eddies in the atmosphere that sort of fade, they wither away, but the next day they can kind of come back to life and enhance low-level easterly winds enough to induce more wind shear, changing winds with height, and bolster the severe weather risk. So Thursday, this whole kind of cold front shifts to the south. Interstate 59, you guys are under that tornado warning for the confirmed tornado. And as you saw there, you can see it on correlation coefficient. But like we were saying, Thursday, that threat extends to the southeastern United States. Then by Friday, there could be kind of another round late day, I'd say along the Mississippi River, especially Memphis to roughly western Tennessee, and down as well to western Mississippi too. That area will see storms on Friday night. Then Saturday, a potentially bigger threat. The question right now, do we see supercells, individual rotating storms, or do we see more in the way of kind of messy things like this that are linear but have occasional kinks in the line to produce tornadoes? I'm thinking the latter. I think we'll see much more in the way of squall line activity with a more widespread damage and wind risk, but still that threat of continued tornadoes as well into Saturday. Eventually Sunday, that will shift east. Even here in the nation's capital, we could see temperatures around 70 degrees, beating out all-time records for New Year's Day, and that chance of even thunderstorms here too. So a lot of action going on. It's anomalously warm outside. We're seeing dew points up to about 65 degrees in Alabama in late December, early January, which is very rare, very atypical, but in an era marked by climate change, we kind of see these warm air masses more frequently, and they're giving us the added juice we need to get severe weather like what's going on right now in Alabama tonight. And that tornado appears to still be ongoing, a little bit southeast of Henniger, southwest of Valley Head, set to cross the highway, but still there, about 3 miles north of Fort Payne.
And Matthew, potentially work its way and get all the way into Georgia, at least that one particular line. It seems to be showing some signs of weakening, just a little bit, really losing that bowing shape there. But nonetheless, this evening rolls on. It just has been a super odd year for weather, a really odd December for weather for sure.
And actually right now, if we could we go back to a new cell that is now tornado warned a little bit south of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, including Moundville. This same area saw multiple tornadoes back-to-back during the month of March. Now this one we were talking about earlier on is the classic isolated rotating supercell. So many things to talk about. So Brent, of course, was hit back on March 25th with a tornado that was on the ground for about 80 miles. Greensboro, that area was also impacted. But if we can pull that radar up once again, a couple really important features that are worth mentioning. So you see the classic Cook. That is our, of course, individual supercell. It's rotating. You see red against green, a little bit southeast of Moundville. That's where the rotation is. But if we can look right there, that's actually where that spin is, just crossing looks like Route 69 and Route 60, eventually heading a little bit south of Duncanville. And this storm is what we call a right mover. So it's moving almost due east. So it is feeling all the spin of the atmosphere. It's not competing with neighbors. And unlike the storms to the north, it's not linear yet, so it doesn't have to compete. This one could be on the ground for a decent amount of time if it's not already. And one other thing, too, if we can pull up reflectivity one last time, I want to show folks we're seeing something called a bounded weak echo region, basically a donut hole. So let's look right there, south of Moundville. You see that last frame? That's that little tiny donut hole. And what we're seeing near the E in Moundville is a little tiny void of yellow. It's tough to spot, but right towards the middle of your screen, that's that donut hole. That's actually where the updraft from the potential tornado is strong enough that it's lofting rain, creating a void where precipitation is unable to fall. So, yeah, a great job by Mike pointing that out right there, of course. You see that little donut hole. So if there was a tornado, it would be right there just east of Moundville. That area, decently well populated, and you have to keep in mind limiting factors. You won't see it, you won't hear it because it's dark at night. You won't be able to see anything coming. Trees there, I mean, I've chased that territory before. It is really tough. There are a lot of folks who don't live in neighborhoods. They live kind of out in the countryside in mobile homes. So anytime we talk about severe weather in places like Alabama, Mississippi, the deep south, it's tricky. But this one is primed. There aren't really many limiting factors for this cell right now. So if there was one that I would bet on being kind of misbehaving tonight, it would be this one.
Matthew, I know you've got to get going here, so we'll probably disconnect with you and we'll continue on with the stream. But thank you so much for joining us. I know you have an incredibly busy schedule. And again, Mother Nature, I don't know if she cares all that much about you and I and really doesn't care what time of year it is. Here we are again, December 29th, and talking about severe storms, tornadoes in and around the Gulf Coast region. Wild stuff. So, Matthew, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Before we round out the stream here, Chris, let's go back to the graphics here so that way we can once again just take a look at how things are developing. As Matthew touched on, that individual cell off on its own. Keep in mind that when you're talking about a storm that's capable of producing a tornado, they want to be by themselves. They do not want to share. They are very selfish. And as you see storms join up into a line, that's where you see things actually starting to weaken a little bit, sharing that potential energy with its nearby storm cells. But what we are seeing right here in this particular area, and let me grab the pointer tool so you can see it once again, right here to the east of Moundville, just crossed over Route 69 there to the southwest of Duncanville. This is right now an area worth watching as you can already see the rotation within it there. Again, to the east of Moundville, green representing winds going toward the radar site and red representing winds away from it. So when you start to see that mixing happening here, that is when You're talking about, again, rotation. That is exactly what this product is used for. We're actually going to jump over. We'll take a look at the correlation coefficient here. And what that's going to show you, as Matthew touched on, is potentially any objects being lofted vertically. And we're seeing maybe a little bit there. You can see the yellows and the greens. This is a somewhat difficult product to really decipher, but pay attention to where we just saw the rotation, right? That's where you want to be watching. And that just crossing I-60, or Route 64, I should say, State Road 69, apologies. It's not anything, again, super significant. Correlation coefficient really going to show you whether or not there's a presence of a debris ball, which would indicate a tornado possibly upwards of EF3 in strength. Again, where we're at right now, not necessarily seeing that, and keep in mind, you're not going to be able to necessarily identify the strength of a tornado until a survey team is able to go out and survey the damage. But as we're looking at radar products right now, again, a radar indicated tornado, and let me switch back to the reflectivity so you can get a better look at it there. And again, you know what? Let's switch to the velocity here. And it's that little notch right there within it. That is the area that we are going to be watching here. And in fact, while we're doing that, let me zoom out. We'll take a look at our other tornado warning, which is hidden in there in Fort Payne. This one's set to expire relatively shortly. Yeah, we have another 2 minutes on that tornado warning. There really isn't much rotation within it anymore, but that is that same line that did, again, produce a tornado. Right now, we'll head back to this cell that we are watching here in just to the west of Brent. Not too long ago, Aaron Jajak was chasing this particular tornado, or this particular area, I should say. So they are certainly used to dealing with weather like this. It's certainly not going to come to them as any kind of surprise. Let me jump back over to the reflectivity so you can take a look at it. Again, when you look at the main line as a whole, most of this up here is part of the main line up near to the east of Rainsville, almost on the border of Georgia there, to the west of Somerville, north of Fort Payne, as well as right there near Mentone and Valley Head. But that tornado warning set to expire within the next minute. It's this guy off by itself to the south and southeast of Tuscaloosa, east of Moundsville, and to the west of Brent, Alabama. You are in that tornado warning. And if we tap on it here, we'll get a look at how long it's in effect for. So until 9:15 Central Time. So that's another half an hour or so from now. Again, those are the cities that are within that tornado warning: Brent, Centerville, Duncanville, Moundville, the counties being Bibb, Hale, and Tuscaloosa County. Alabama, no stranger to severe weather. And actually, what we're going to do here is I'm just going to jog back a couple of minutes so you can take a look at how this has developed here. Keep in mind, this system off on its own, and you can really see how it enjoys that fact, that there's nothing for it to take any of its energy. It is certainly psyched to be off on its own. This supercell certainly having a lot of room to grow. Think about it when you wake up in the morning and you get a nice big stretch in, right? That is essentially what this storm is doing right now because it doesn't have much of anything else getting in the way. Imagine getting up to stretch and your arms hit a really low ceiling. Well, that would kind of, relatively speaking, occur when these storms are joined along a line. They're having to really share all of their available energy. But as it stands right now, let me switch back to the velocity mode, and we're watching right there. You can see it's perfect there for you, just to the east of Moundville, to the west of Route 82, and to the east of Route 69. That is the area that we are going to be closely watching here. Right there, that is the velocity signature. Stand by, folks. Just going to tweet something out on social media, and we will stay here with you. So again, this is that tornado, or at least radar-indicated tornado, I should say. Let me double check. We're just going to make sure that that has been confirmed. Take a look here. Yep, so hail roughly between 1¼ inches in diameter. We haven't seen a ton of hail this evening, but we have seen some reports of some smaller hail. Mainly, it's been a lot of wind damage, and there haven't been all that many reports of wind damage, but it's mainly been right here in this strip of Alabama, right across north central Alabama, where we have seen confirmed reports of wind damage. Let me take a look here. You know what? Let's do that. We will zoom out a little bit here. So again, you can see those reports up to the north there. Let me grab my pen tool. All up here, right? You can see the hail icon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The tree icon is just representative of wind damage. But now we are watching, again, that cell to the south of those reports. Just to double check here, the tornado warning up near Fort Payne has expired. So now we are again watching this particular cell pushing east of Moundville, southwest of Duncanville, working its way toward Route 82 there. So we just saw the tornado warning, the polygon shift a little bit there. So the National Weather Service office in Birmingham, Alabama, is continuing that tornado warning again until 9:15 Central Time. And as of right now, it's just radar indicated. So we haven't necessarily seen any ground truth on that yet. Something else to keep in mind, folks, the sun has set, right? So when it comes to potential energy that is available to this system, I mean, the atmosphere is very juicy, so to speak, but at least if you're looking at a silver lining here, we don't have the sun and the daytime heating to really keep this thing going. Another thing to consider as well is that there's a lot of rain with this system too. Let me switch back over to the reflectivity so you can get a real good look at this. Again, that's a lot of heavy rain, right? So this is very likely, and if I switch back to the velocity product, very likely wrapped up in rain. Again, for the folks that are just joining us, we are watching a tornado warning here for north central Alabama, just to the south of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, southwest of Duncanville, west of Brent, and southwest of West Blockton. It is this area right here that we are paying close attention to. Remember, green is representative of winds going toward the radar site, red representative of winds going away from it. And as earlier we spoke with meteorologist Matthew Cappucci, he talked about the BWER, the bounded weak echo region, that little donut hole. Let me go back to it here so you can get a better look at it. And really what that's showing you is the presence of a very powerful updraft. Remember, with severe thunderstorms, with supercell thunderstorms, here it is, right here. So I'll center right over it. That is roughly our little donut hole, if you were, the BWER. We're getting a little nerdy here, folks, but it's really interesting when you're talking about supercell thunderstorms. You have updraft and downdraft, right? You have these. You need those in order for a thunderstorm to develop, become mature, and eventually dissipate, right? So the updraft initially is what gets things going. A very powerful downdraft, typically where you're going to find some really nasty weather. And then once the downdraft overtakes the updraft, that's when you start to see these things begin to dissipate and weaken. But as it stands right now, again, this thing had no issues here. Let me jog it back here and take a look at the time. So in roughly 20 to 30 minutes, if that, we have seen this supercell thunderstorm develop very, very quickly. In fact, as we were on with meteorologist Matthew Cappucci, that tornado warning went up. But that's kind of the setup as we're expecting to see. Let me switch back to velocity mode. Again, you're starting to see a little bit of rotation even outside of the tornado warning area, the polygon that's in red, just to the northwest of Duncanville. But it's this guy right here that I'm circling. Let me grab the pen tool here, the line tool, I should say. That is the area that we will be watching. And if you watch, if I jog it back, let me adjust the, you know what, let me clear off that, and I will redraw it here for you, folks. Pay attention to this area in that yellow circle, okay? Right there, just to the east of Moundville. You can see that, right? That is the rotation, and if I continue to advance it out, you can see that it sticks out like a sore thumb. That right there, again, indicative of the mesocyclone, indicative of winds shearing in opposite directions. Remember, you need shear in the environment in order for us to get a funnel cloud, again, to get that mesocyclone and eventually a tornado to reach the ground. The sheared environment earlier this evening kind of looked like it was going to be a bit underwhelming, but man, the Storm Prediction Center, those folks are the Navy SEALs of severe weather forecasting. They have just been on it today. Again, if I zoom things out, we'll go. In fact, Chris, actually, if you want to switch to the My Radar app real quick, I will pull up the weather outlook for you. Again, so looking at the app here, that is the same radar reflectivity that we were just looking at. But if I go into the layers menu here, I'm going to go into the weather outlooks menu. In fact, I can just turn it on and we'll zoom out. There is that enhanced risk area. Again, a 3 out of 5 from the Storm Prediction Center. In fact, here I'll crank up the opacity so you can really see it, or rather, it is already. So I'll turn off the radar just so you can get a good look at it. It's right there, right? So if I zoom out, it almost looks like an avocado, right? So you have the yellow color, a slight risk, a 2 out of 5 from the Storm Prediction Center, but then right there in that enhanced risk, a 3 out of 5. Let me turn the radar back on, and boom. The Storm Prediction Center nailed it in terms of where that area would be. Now, right now, we're watching that tornado south of the enhanced risk area, but nonetheless, still a slight risk is indicative of isolated severe thunderstorms capable of producing tornadoes, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, this storm is isolated. It's off on its own. Let me turn off the weather outlooks. Chris, if you want to switch back to the graphics so we can watch the reflectivity or the velocity product. Again, that storm is off on its own. And that is the concern right now. It doesn't have anything to really share its energy with. Again, we are watching here in the My Radar app. This is part of the Pro Radar pack, which enables you to be able to select any radar site in America from the National Weather Service, and you are able to not only look at composite reflectivity, but velocity, correlation coefficient, a lot of awesome radar products there, and you can alter the tilt. But for right now, Chris, if you want to switch back to the live radar here on WSI, I've got that set up, ready to go here. Perfect. There we go. So we are watching this little area here, and that is, again, the area of rotation that we are watching, indicative of a sheared environment. And again, certainly an area that we are going to continue to watch as this works its way eastward. Just looking at my social media feed here, folks. So it seems that the Storm Prediction Center discussing whether or not to issue an extended tornado watch for portions of far southeastern Tennessee, Georgia, and even portions of South and North Carolina. So that is something that we will be watching here as well. I actually just retweeted on the My Radar account, My Radar WX. I just retweeted a video from our partners at Severe Studios of tornado damage from earlier this evening in Winfield, Alabama. Yeah, so this storm here kind of, I don't want to say snuck up on us a little bit, but all day today, things have been, again, somewhat underwhelming in terms of what we were initially anticipated, which I guess is a good thing. You don't wish for the worst here. You hope for the best. But we, again, are watching this particular area right here. So a little bit of that rotation starting to weaken a little bit. In fact, Chris, if you want to take it full so we can get a better look at it here. Again, I'll jog it back just a few frames. Let's go back to roughly 10 minutes ago. And you can really see it clear as day right there. That is the rotation. Remember, we are right now using the Birmingham, Alabama radar. Green representing winds going toward it, red representing winds going away from the radar. So when you start to see that right there, that is indicative for sure of rotation. But notice what happens as I advance it out a little more. You start to see it begin to weaken. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that, you have the all clear. That is not the case whatsoever. You are still under a tornado warning. It's some tornadoes, and I'm sure Matthew Cappucci could speak to this, some tornadoes or funnel clouds, mesocyclones, have the ability to almost yo-yo up and down from the cloud deck, especially when it's present in an atmosphere that it is conducive to do so. It is a very unstable atmosphere as it stands right now. Dew points were off the charts earlier today, and we have this boundary to the backside of this. In fact, Chris, if you want to switch over to the MyRadar app for just a moment here, I've got the fronts map turned on as well. There you go. So you can see this kind of dashed line there. That's just indicative of a boundary. So a cold front, a warm front, those are boundaries, but this is just a weak boundary just on the western side of this main line here. It's kind of just riding along this area, that stationary front. Can you see the alternating warm front, cold front, warm front, cold front? Imagine if you are a football fan, you have the offensive and defensive lines jockeying over the line of scrimmage. That is essentially what is happening with a stationary front, where neither the warm air mass nor the cold air mass is strong enough to overtake one another. And what you typically find along a stationary front is a lot of precipitation, as it just seemingly sits there, hence its name, stationary front. Now, eventually, a cold front will win out. It will wedge underneath that warmer air. Of course, we know warm air rises, right? That cold air gets up underneath it and kind of forces it higher into the atmosphere. Now, of course, that is when you see some rather nasty weather. That is why at the leading edge of a cold front, you see wet weather, because you are forcing that wet, moist air higher into the atmosphere. Now, with a stationary front, it just takes a little bit longer to really get going. But when you're talking about an already unstable atmosphere with dew points that earlier today were between 50 and 60 degrees, remember, folks, it is December 29th. Cannot emphasize that enough. I mean, this would be normal, so to speak, if we were in March, April, May. Here we are, December 29th. Christmas was just 4 days ago. Wild. Chris, let's jump back to the graphics that I have prepared here. Just want to continue to look at the rotation within this cell. Again, starting to see it giving way a little bit here. We'll stay with you through the expiration of this tornado warning. So again, like I just touched on, that kind of almost yo-yoing kind of effect. You see, let me grab the pointer tool. Right here is where that potential tornado is. But then we see it begin to, again, bounce up and down, so to speak. So it's very possible that even right here, that if there was a tornado on the ground, that it might have possibly lifted just a little bit. And right there, you can see it popping up just to the west and southwest of Hagler and to the west of Route 82. Bear with me here. Just going to... One thing I just realized, I have not looked at the chat at all. I thank you very much for watching with us this evening. I hope that you are all staying safe. Of course, 2021 has been a long year, following a year that was very, very long as well, 2020. Both years that seem to fly by and go by very slowly at the same time. Very, very unusual. So if you guys have any questions for me, get them in the chat, and I will try my best to answer them as they come in. Again, I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you are staying safe this evening. Again, we are watching this area of rotation to the west of Hagler, Alabama, southeast of Duncanville. Duncanville, you are just outside of this tornado warning. It's very likely very wet where you are right now and gusting some very strong winds. But when it comes to the tornado threat, you are somewhat there in the clear. To the folks that live in Hagler, you need to be in your safe place. Not too long ago, we watched this supercell really get going here, and this is a radar-indicated tornado. Are awaiting confirmation of it being on the ground. We've yet to see that, which is a good thing, but you certainly want to take this threat very seriously, being that we can certainly see the indication on radar that there's something there. It is in a sheared environment. You are seeing the signature on our velocity product. About 14 minutes to go here in this tornado warning. It's very possible that if this rotation is still present, that the National Weather Service office will, in Birmingham, I should say, will keep this warning and continue to extend it off to the east. Brent, you are in the southeastern corner of this, so as this storm continues to work its way north-northwest, you're seemingly not going to be involved, although bear in mind it is very possible that within this cell you might see some additional rotation begin to spin up, so you still need to take this seriously as you would any other tornado warning. But for the folks that live in Hagler, Alabama, you need to be in your safe place. A radar indicated tornado just to the west of you, about to cross over Route 82 there. Just going to move it back a couple of frames so you can get a better look at this. In fact, let's take a look at another radar product. We're going to go to the correlation coefficient. Again, this could show us anything potentially being lofted vertically, and will give us an indication of how strong this thing really is. So the CC here, the correlation coefficient, not showing us anything that's really jumping out at you here. This is a somewhat complex product here, but it would really show you if we were dealing with potentially an EF3 or greater. You would really begin to see like a big mess, so to speak. I mean, it would really stand out. Those blues and greens and yellow colors, it would stand out like a sore thumb, and that would be indicative of debris being lofted vertically into the air. Of course, debris can be anything, really. Anything that these storms are capable of lofting off the ground. Let's go back to the reflectivity, take a greater look at this thing. If I bring it back just a couple of frames. In fact, let me zoom it out even more. Remember, when we were looking at this about a half an hour ago, right there, you see that this storm is kind of off on its own, right? Zooming out, there's the main line. This guy's off on its own, a rogue line, if you will. Let's push it out, stop it right there. Notice you're starting to see that bowing happening right here. Imagine when you pull back on a bow, like with a bow and arrow. It's pretty indicative of strong winds as the radar is picking that up. Let's go to the present. So again, seeing that donut hole, the bounded weak echo region, right in here. And if I switch to the velocity, there it is. So crossing over State Route 82. Again, Hagler, for the folks that live there, as I mentioned about 15 minutes ago, you need to be in your safe place. A radar-indicated tornado, I mean, just passed over you right there. And now working its way toward Moffett, Lucille as well. Crossed over Route 82, north of Ingate, east of now Hagler. So Moffett, Lucille, West Blockton, you are not in the tornado warning, but I suspect here within the next 11 minutes we may see an extension of this tornado warning. Again, Moffett, West Blockton, Lucille. This is what we'll be watching closely here. The rotation, as I mentioned, if we go back just a couple of frames, you thought we lost it, right? Right there, you'd be thinking, oh, looks like it's gone. Especially so when you see it, look at the time there, 9:46. And if I advance it out, just roughly 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, there's still indication of rotation, but weaker. We advance out another 10 minutes, and there it goes. I mean, really sticking out like a sore thumb there. Here, you know what? I'll drop the warning box. You can get a real good look at it. So for the folks that live in Rearson, it is to your northeast. Again, that is quite a signature, especially, again, when you look at a calendar and you consider the fact that Christmas was 4 days ago and New Year's Eve is 2 days from now. I mean, just a little over 2 days. Okay, so for, again, the communities of Moffett, Belchers, West Blockton, You need to be in your safe place. Just zooming out one more time here to take a look at things again. The main area of damage has been right here across north central Alabama, south of Cullman, north of Trafford, Jasper, Fayette. But Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or just to the south of it here, is where we are watching now. So you can see the radar site there. Again, south of Birmingham. So in fact, this particular system kind of working its way right toward the radar, which is right here, right along that line. Let me grab the ruler here so we can look at distance. I mean, roughly, approximately 30 to 35 miles away. And this thing's hustling. Let me grab this. So there is the details of the tornado warning. We have another 8 minutes to go on this tornado warning. Remains to be seen whether or not this will be extended. If I had to guess, I would assume it will, just based on the fact that I mean, it's sticking out like a sore thumb, right? We shall see. In fact, let me zoom out a little more. I'm going to go back here. You guys won't be able to see this, but I'm just going to turn it on. Can you see that red kind of box? In fact, here, let me turn that off. Chris, if you want to go to the My Radar app, let me turn off fronts. We'll go in here. Okay. It's a yellow box. Let me go in here. I'll turn off the radar. You can see it really clearly here. This yellow box, that is a tornado watch. That if I tap on the Birmingham area, you can see that it is supposed to go until 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So another hour or so to go on that. That remains to be seen whether or not that will be extended into the evening hours. Remember, it's pretty much this main line, but the storm that we are watching to the east of Moundville, northwest of Brent there, is kind of off on its own right now. It's approaching the edge of, let me turn it back on, it's approaching the edge of that tornado watch. We'll go in here. I'm just going to turn the opacity down just for right now. And again, you can see even as far as northwestern Georgia, that tornado watch in effect for 4 counties, that being Chattanooga, Dade, Floyd, and Walker counties, including the cities of Lafayette, Rome, Somerville, and Trenton. But we are really keying in on, Chris, if you want to switch back to the graphics here, got the velocity product turned on. We're really jumping around here, and big shout out to the folks behind the scenes. We had Matt here earlier today. Chris now is pulling the strings behind the scenes, so big shout out to the My Radar video crew. It has been quite a year. We've been very busy, but that's certainly a good thing. All right, so again, we are watching right here, this area of rotation west of Moffett, east of Hagler, northwest of Eoline, State Route 82, west of 219 and Route 5. You need to be in your safe place. Again, let me grab the ruler. So Moffett, we're talking 6 miles here. I mean, looking at it on the radar, approximately 6 miles from you is a radar-indicated tornado. This area has been under a tornado watch since earlier this afternoon. Now dealing with an active tornado warning. That is that red box there. Just going to keep switching around for you folks. Remember, not too long ago, I go back, this guy was kind of off on its own. Notice now, though, let me bring it back to present time, you're starting to see the gaps filling in a little bit, right? Right in here, kind of over Birmingham, Alabaster. When it comes to things weakening, this is what you're going to want to see. You're going to want to see this line kind of coming together, so that way this storm cell doesn't have to share, this supercell doesn't have to share with the rest of the line there. They're very selfish. They do not like each other. They want to stay by themselves. Jump back again. We've got to keep watching that velocity. Just to the west of Moffett, remember, green representing winds going toward the radar site, red representing winds away from it. So that is sticking out like a sore thumb there. A radar-indicated tornado. For those of you that are just joining us, it is just after 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I am meteorologist Mike Linden from the MyRadar weather team, and we are watching a radar-indicated tornado. If I zoom out a little bit, this is in Alabama, to the southeast of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. If you're familiar with the Alabama Crimson Tide, the University of Alabama football team, they are located in Tuscaloosa there. In fact, they're playing in the college football playoff in a couple of days here. So for the folks of Alabama, busy these next couple of days. But this is not something that I would imagine they would have to deal with in late December. 2021, a super unusual year for weather, coming off of a historic 2020 hurricane season, a very busy 2021 hurricane season. Not too long ago, we saw very powerful tornadoes push through portions of Kentucky, Missouri. Really unfortunate damage there left behind. A serial derecho that moved upwards of 65 miles per hour. That's faster than cars driving on the interstate. Crazy. Gusts of wind in Nebraska, Kansas, upwards of 100 miles per hour. That was just a couple of weeks ago, not months ago. Not so much in December. All right, so I'm going to leave this on here. I've got okay. So you folks should be able to hear me now. Just a little technical difficulty there. Of course, just as I was answering folks' questions. Zooming out here, good news is that we just got to the end of that tornado warning. So that has since expired. And I'm surprised to see that they have not extended that. Either way, there is rotation within that cell. So that is something we will have to closely monitor. I'm just going to answer some of your questions here. Unusual. I'll keep looking at that. I'm going to answer some of your questions here before we say goodnight. A lot of people watching in Alabama. Large cell over Tennessee. So Damon watching on YouTube, thank you very much for hanging with us this evening. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a powerful line pushing eastward. Chris, if you want to pull up next to me, you can take the MyRadar app here. I've got it centered over Tennessee. Yeah, perfect. So there's certainly a line moving through Tennessee right now. Nothing severe. some strong stuff, but nothing like what Alabama is dealing with right now. Again, under a tornado watch. We've got some folks, again, a lot of folks watching in Alabama. We've got someone watching here in South Carolina. SPC just issued tornado watch for most of North Georgia. So it has not come through here on my end, so I'm unsure. Double check. Aha. You are correct, sir. I'm just going to take a moment to come into the app. But yes, portions of North and South Carolina, North Georgia, that does include Atlanta, Gainesville, Athens, Macon. Stand by. So it'll come into the app in just a moment here. While we're doing that, let me switch over to here. Stand by, folks. So, Chris, if you want to switch to the graphics here, I've got it pulled up. So that this hasn't pulled it in yet either. But there is another tornado warning. There we go. Let's get rid of the watch box. Okay. So a new tornado warning. This is in effect for the next half an hour, right up until 9:45 Central Time. For what it's worth as well, that tornado watch, when it pops up here, just got to wait for it to clear its caching here, is in effect until 5 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Time. So a bumpy evening for the folks of North Georgia. You need to have multiple ways to receive a tornado, to receive weather alerts, that being the My Radar app, a NOAA weather radio. Be sure that that thing is ready to go this evening, of course, in the event that you are to lose power. Jump back over here. We are going to take a look here at the velocity product. So I've probably got to switch to a different radar because we are getting a little too far away from some of the other radars. So stand by. We're going to look at the reflectivity there, and behind the scenes, I'm just going to do some switching around. Earlier today, we were looking at severe weather in Arkansas, so let's lose that radar site, and we are going to pull up that one. And we'll go with that one. All right. In the meantime here, I'm going to jump over into the My Radar app. Chris, if you want to pull that up here, we'll take a look at the velocity product there. So using the per station radar feature, which is in the Pro Radar pack, if I zoom out here, you can see all of those available radar sites. You can pick whichever one you want. We're going to pick this one here in Peachtree, Georgia. And that's going to give us a good look at this particular tornado warning. Again, this is in effect for roughly the next half an hour until 9:45 Central Time. For right now, it's just radar indicated rotation. So we don't have anything confirmed just yet. And what you can do is tap on this crosshair here on the right-hand side, and we're going to switch to velocity. So a little muddled, some clutter coming into the product there. but nothing like what we were seeing before in Alabama, so that's a good thing. Again, we've got about another half an hour to go on this. Another 20 minutes, I should say. We'll switch back to that. Turn the opacity up a little bit. So this is all part of this larger line now. And Chris, if we switch back to the graphics, just want to show folks something else here. This particular line has a history, so to speak. I don't mean that somewhat as a joke. I mean, it literally has a history of damage so far this evening, producing damaging wind gusts, as well as some reports of downed trees and damage to outbuildings. That was earlier this evening. In fact, even as far west, not too long ago in Winfield, Alabama, we did see some tornado damage there. I've retweeted it on the MyRadar Twitter account. But now that same line starting to get going once again here. It's that one right there. We'll look at the correlation coefficient. Again, this is showing us, it is a radar product that shows us debris or objects being lofted vertically into the atmosphere. And as of now, nothing really jumps out, which is, again, a good thing, because when you start to see indication on correlation coefficient, that means you're talking a pretty powerful tornado. I mean, it's very weak somewhat in terms of the rotation, but right in here, it's a little difficult to tell, but you're looking at different shades. Needed to switch to another radar site there. We'll go back to the reflectivity. We'll zoom out. Again, for the folks that live in Piedmont, we're not in Georgia yet. This is still in Alabama. Piedmont, Asbury, Alsop, Merrilton. You need to be in your safe place. We're talking about Route 21, 278, and Route 9. That tornado warning right there. Just looking over on social media. Making sure we have our bases covered. So if we jump back to the app here, Chris, just going to take a second for the products to load in. It's starting to jump around on me there. We can at least look at several frames. So it's very cluttered in terms of the velocity. Not seeing anything like what we saw earlier. Just has to load in for us. Yeah, so it's that cell right there. Again, the good news is here, folks, that this is kind of joining into that main line, and it is likely to sap the energy from storms right around it there. But for now, we are probably going to round things out. We will continue to keep things updated on social media as we continue to watch this unfold, because, again, there you can see that tornado watch. And you got it, Chris. Perfect. So that yellow box, that is a newly issued tornado watch. And notice how much time is left there, 6 hours and 33 minutes. So for the folks that live in Georgia, this does include the city of Atlanta, Greenville. This goes into North and South Carolina a little bit. You are under a tornado watch until 5 o'clock into the morning. So you need to have multiple ways to receive weather alerts, that being the My Radar app. Make sure your phone is charged, tablet, whatever. Even if you have the Windows app, as long as you're able to receive those alerts and you can hear them enough so to wake you up if you are asleep. Again, a NOAA weather radio. If you do not have one, I certainly suggest you invest in one. That will be somewhat of a fail-safe if you were to lose even cellular connection, your internet connection. It's always good to have multiple ways to receive alerts. You don't want to rely on a tornado warning siren. That's a really silly idea. All right, but Chris, we will probably round things out there. We will continue to keep things monitored here on social media as well as in the app. Be sure to keep an eye on things. Again, big shout out to meteorologist Matthew Cappucci, who joined us earlier today. Again, the Atlanta Metro under that tornado watch until 5 o'clock in the morning. So you need to be alert through the rest of this evening here, December 29th, about to be December 30th. But from all of us on the My Radar team, stay safe and stay dry. We'll catch you back here in the next one. See ya.